a special Mac Voices After Dark, Part 1. This is Mac Voices. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is a special Mac Voices After Dark, Part 1. After one of the recent live shows, the conversation went on with so much great discussion that I was really sorry we had ended the show. So rather than just keeping this to ourselves and to our patrons, I'm going to release the second part of our conversation, the one that happened after the show, not the pre-show, but after the show, in two parts here in the live stream. Quick warning though, this is Mac Voices After Dark, so sometimes the language can get a little salty, and the panel is even less restrained, if that's possible, than they normally are. So keep that in mind when you're listening to this, because this may end up sounding a little bit different to you. But there's some really great information discussed that followed on the conversations during the regular show. Again, this will be published in two parts, so there'll be one more part. With that, let's get to it.
I mean, guy's already out.
Yeah.
I also make sure
his mom still hot too. That's what's amazing.
I apologize to Ben Rathick. I forgot to mention his name when I did my outro. So thank you, Ben. I can look forward to seeing you.
Question for you about birds. In the Central Coast here, my wife is going crazy because she's had all these hummers out, and over the winter, very few hummingbirds are there. But in the past 7 to 10 days, the thing's gone crazy with hummingbirds coming in, all sorts of fights and different species. We're waiting for orioles. Do you get many of them in your part of, I think, Ohio, right? That's where you are?
For me?
Yeah.
I'm in Wisconsin.
Oh, Wisconsin. Oh, sorry.
That's Ohio adjacent.
Yeah, you're northeastern Ohio.
Yeah, so it's early yet.
It's northwestern Ohio, actually.
Yeah.
Geography down.
Another month and we'll start seeing hummingbirds. It's a little early still.
And how about monarchs? Because they've been migrating for about the past 5 or 6 weeks. Monarch butterflies.
Yeah, monarchs. We had some a few months ago, and it'll probably be maybe 3 months, and we'll start seeing them again.
Mm-hmm.
It's very early for them. If they're here now, it's an accident.
Exactly. It's ones that got orphaned as children.
Our plants came inside and they hatched unexpectedly.
Right.
I had that problem with
like
my
the
children.
Start of a horror movie.
Yeah, it kind of does. Oh, pod people.
That's what happens when you get one of those praying mantis egg cases and you forget you're supposed to keep it chilled and you set it on the counter.
Yeah. So again, to you, Eric, and to Jeff, thanks for responding positively to my, factual challenges about your claims. So, it's important that we be accurate in what we say. Because we have, because thanks to Chuck, we have a big audience here. So, we don't want to transmit bad data.
So it's Chuck's fault.
Because we didn't go through the Chuck App Store.
Yeah.
Oh, and I really appreciated what you were saying about, all the troubles that, and all the predicaments Apple's going to be in, because people will go out and they'll get screwed because they go to the wrong app store and they'll expect Apple to fix it.
Yep. And Apple's not going to do it if they're smart.
And it seems to me like it's like a car dealer or a refrigerator dealer. It breaks, and I don't want to spend a lot of money. Let me go to the cheap Charlie down the street, and
some guy I know at 7-Eleven.
That's right, and it doesn't work, and they go back to the manufacturer and they sorry, you've voided your warranty. You should have called us first. Why didn't you? Oh, I was worried about how much you were going to cost. Blah 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 blah. Sorry, we can't help you. And I think, sadly, Apple's going to be in that same sort of, is being forced to go into that same sort of bad customer experience position.
It's going to hurt that reputation.
definitely.
It puts Apple in a no-win position.
Mhm.
You know, because if they do it, then it's costing them money that they really shouldn't be expected to spend. And if they don't do it, then they get a reputation for not supporting their products.
Now, okay, Chuck, here's how I see it working with the way Apple systems are today. So I go to Chuckwagon, the app store where everything is cheap, 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 and I get an app that hoses my iPhone, and I don't know where to go, so I call Apple Care, and I tell them here's what's going on, and here's the app, and Apple will say, okay, well, that's not from our app store, and you can try contacting the developer. However, here's what we can do to get your phone working again, and they walk them through resetting the phone.
Oh, yeah.
So Jeff, that gives me an idea. So remember, what was it? 2-3-ish years ago, Apple reportedly started to put sensors in their iPhones, so they could detect if it was dropped into a toilet
Water,
or pool or something.
Accidental water damage.
They might be able to do similar thing with monitoring, and then they could easily interrogate the phone and right away start to have the conversation. Oh, we've seen that this has been serviced by a non-Apple company.
Yeah.
We can't help you, but let me tell you about our special our special cheapskate service program for the low price of, pick a number, $99.99. We can diagnose it, and you can take it into one of our Apple stores, and we can do a repair for you for the price of
Right.
whatever it is that it takes to fix it. I think
Here's
maybe
our
that might
warranty.
be
Here's our warranty price. And since you violated warranty, here's our violated warranty price.
Mhm.
Oh,
that's better language on the same idea. It's but basically they have to offer sort of instead of having one universal "we love you" Apple Care, they're going to be forced into a first class and second class type of user care experience.
And if it turns out it's that simple, I will be happy about it, because that means that there is objectively a way to tell that.
there should be a way to tell.
But that I've made a conscious decision to go and try to go to Cheap Charlie's and see if it worked, and if not, I just bumped myself up into another level.
Unless you're in Oregon.
Well,
no,
Marty?
the same similar thing could work in Oregon too.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, but
again, Apple will have to relax the ability of parts pairing, but again, with a good customer education program, and I think they really could do a better job of selling the benefits of Apple Care. So if they're forced to do this, they could have better education of. It's sort of like oh my God, 30, 40 years ago, I think it was Porsche or BMW used to have all these ads educating about why they use certain titanium metals in the spark plugs, because it leads to better ignition and better power and lower gas exhaust. So I think Apple could engage in a consumer education program, and that's typically very un-Apple like, but if they're forced into this by all these government agencies, that might be an appropriate marketing response. And
that might also.
I'm sure they have bigger
trouble.
marketing brains than all of us put together times a million, but they'll be able to figure this out.
So a question that I ask and nobody ever really got back to it is, how is Oregon going to enforce this? I mean, are they going to penalize Apple for every phone that comes in or that somebody tries to repair themselves because there's a parts pair? And the other thing I honestly don't know, is the parts pairing strictly a software thing, or is it a hardware, or is it a combination where software has to read the hardware?
It's a combination, because the different components, they have identifying chip in them. And so then you have that authenticating identifier element that then the software will query. And if I'm remembering correctly, all the pieces for everything to be legit talking to each other, that chunk of data is stored in the secure enclave. Guy just got a cat sneeze on him.
Okay, time for you to get down, kitty.
So, Chuck, the scenario I'm seeing in Oregon is you take your iPhone to the corner store that does smartphone repair.
She doesn't want to get down.
Well, no, she's got the sneeze out of her. She's ready to snuggle. So you go get your battery replaced at the local corner phone repair shop, and now your phone doesn't work right. And so you're like, well, crap. Okay, I better take it to Apple. And you go into an Apple store and they plug it in. They're like, oh, yeah, this is not an official Apple part in here. We can't help you with that. And I don't think they should have to help you with that because it's not an Apple part.
But Jeff, that's not the way they should do it. They, instead of leaving the customer in the world of hurt, they should say, it's unfortunate it's not working. This is not an Apple part. This is how we can help bring you back to a working phone, and then outline their solution.
Sure, which, yeah. And of course, that's what Apple would do. You're right. And because it's now not a warranty fix because it has third-party parts in it, now kicks in that alternate coverage tier that's going to cost them more to have it pulled apart and have genuine authorized parts put back in and paired properly with the device.
Jeff, do you see any way it'd be possible that if somehow I was able to identify myself as being in Oregon, that the parts pairing thing, because if I understand correctly, right now the parts pairing thing, you put a non-authorized, oh boy, I can't talk tonight, a non-authorized part in, the phone just won't work. Okay, so
or it won't have full functionality.
Okay, so if I'm in Oregon, and either I'm identified as being in Oregon by the information I have in iCloud or on my Apple ID, could that be a way that Apple could identify that I'm in Oregon and that gets turned off? And so the part pairing requirement thing, and so now it's just a matter of, well, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but the part pairing cobbling is not going to apply.
I have no idea how they would do that.
I thought that what it would mean would be that you'd have to be able to get access to the software to actually register the part that's going in and have access to order actual real parts. Kind of like what they've done with the other repair programs where they send you a whole kit to take something apart, put it back together again using all of the Apple tools.
So yeah, that's still parts pairing.
So the parts pairing, even if you have a legitimate part, it still needs to get checked in with Apple software to activate it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not an official repair facility, you don't have access to the software to activate it. So maybe all that they would end up having to do is allow that access in that state.
So Jeff,
guys, I gotta go.
Good night, Guy.
Good night, Guy. Thanks.
Good night, Guy.
Good to see you.
Thanks, everybody.
See you, guys.
So Jeff, what I've seen different reporting of this, so I don't know what the actual veracity of whatever they passed is, but I thought I saw one thing that I think is consistent with what Eric is saying, which is that I think they said that parts pairing, they have to make wasn't that parts pairing was illegal. It's just they had to make the same set of parts and repair tools, et cetera, available if they are going to do parts pairing as they would for any other, repair, provider. And
yes.
And that's kind of what they're doing now, right? Because it was a year or 2 years ago, everyone was writing these articles. I went to repair this and I got this humongous 50-pound box of tools. but that's in compliance with what they needed to do.
So yes, that is a big chunk of this law or bill, and the other part is it actually prohibits the software checks to verify the parts.
Oh, really? I hadn't seen any reportage about that.
Yeah. And I get why a lot of places are focusing on the first part, because there are other states that have done that already.
So here's a completely non sequitur. Is sort of the Constitution, and interstate commerce. I would be fascinated to see Apple bring an appeal on this, and it gets overruled on the ground that Oregon can't dictate commerce in the rest of the 49 states and other U.S. territories.
Can I?
I'll be watching this.
I've got a. What if I go to Cheap Charlie's and Cheap Charlie says, "Well, here's a part. It'll fix it. It'll make things work, except for this particular aspect of the phone, and I don't care."
Then there
you know, then you go. You get the cheap and I'm wondering if some of the functionality of the phone is so nuanced that a lot of people that might lose that wouldn't even know they lost it.
I'm sure in some cases that would be true. In others, like someone gets their phone that has Touch ID, get a new button in there, and now you can't do the authentication part, and so now you have to type in your passcode every time you unlock your phone.
Yeah.
It just, I mean, it really is interesting. And to your point, Marty, I think that was what was happening, or did happen. I can't remember if it was Face ID or Touch ID, but I think that was, something that was happening, that it wasn't working, and people were just like, yeah, fine, I'll just put on the passcode and go on. And what I never saw any reports about it or not, as to whether that affected any of the more subtle functions of the phone, like any access to security or ways to get around the security that is provided by Touch ID or Face ID, depending on what the case was.
Don't you need to have Touch ID or Face ID active, functional, to be able to add credit cards and debit cards to Apple Wallet, so you can do Apple Pay? Even though you can type your code to authenticate at the point of purchase, I'm pretty sure you have to have the biometric authentication feature functional so that you can set those features, so you can set up your cards in Apple Wallet. So if you can't use Touch ID or Face ID, then you can't use Apple Pay.
I think I do remember something about that, Jeff, but I can't confirm that right now.
Well, you at least have to have a model that has that feature. I'm not sure if you have to use the feature, though.
Well, you don't have to use the feature when you authenticate making a purchase, but you have to have it enabled and active to set up the cards.
You might be right with that. How?
I'm pretty sure this is why my dad was never able to use his credit cards, because his fingers are so smooth. He has no readable prints, and it wasn't until he got a phone with Face ID that he could start using Apple Pay. Luckily, his face isn't so smooth that it doesn't have features.
Otherwise, he'd have to get a watch,
right?
This whole thing seems like such a slippery slope, and it reminds me of was it Minnesota that banned TikTok?
Yeah,
do I have that right? Was it
Montana? I think.
Montana. Okay, it was something with an M.
They're not contributing any good content for Montana, anyways.
Yeah, it's like, okay, this is great, but you've taken a stand, and good for you. But in the real world, what does it really mean? I mean, there was no way to put up a location fence around that state to say, "Oh, I'm inside now, so TikTok won't work."
What's is it Pornhub that shut down
They
access
shut
in
down
Utah
Texas.
or Texas?
Texas. I don't know about YouTube, but all right.
And
Utah.
and then the purchase of VPNs went up in Texas that same weekend.
Yeah, how
So
about
they
that?
tell me.
Yeah, it's. I mean, that's what they said on NPR.
Yes.
So yeah, Chuck, it's like how do you enforce that?
Yeah, and that's what I'm asking about this. You know, this law and your comment. I'm afraid it was lost on everyone, Jeff, about the toothbrushes. You know, but you're right. That seems to be a carve out every
Yeah,
time.
electric toothbrushes are exempted from all of these right to repair parts laws, which is just so weird.
And in California, we had going into effect, April 1st, yesterday, a $20 minimum wage at fast food restaurants. The ones that are accepted are ones that sell bread as a standalone product, like a large donor to our governor does. So, there's always a loophole, always, especially when politicians get involved to try to help people. They do more damage often than they do good. I mean, it's a quote from Julius Caesar. Mark Antony in his eulogizing Caesar. The evil men do lives after them. Their good is oft interred with their bones. So I think there's somebody in Oregon who thinks this is a winning issue, and they're taking it out at Apple's expense in order to get some votes. Color me cynical.
I don't think that's cynical at all. It just, I mean, it feels like we have the EU throwing its weight around. It's got a bit more weight than Oregon, but you have different states, and I mean, to be, I don't want this to become political, but you look at what's happening with the abortion debate. I mean, it's just fascinating to the schisms that have developed there, and how the battles are being fought.
You mean science or no science?
Well, just banning or not banning, science or no science. Yeah, I mean, it feels like we're losing sight of a whole lot of different things that are kind of the basis that you should be making these decisions on.
I feel like at one point there was a question asked when you try to come up with a new law, who does it actually help? And, are there enough people that it helps that it's worth actually creating a whole law? And it seems like that either that question isn't asked anymore, or one or two people that donate money that's all you really need, and it doesn't have to be a good proportion of whoever it is your population is.
Or Eric, I have a complementary view, which is when new laws get passed, there should be some sort of sunset period, 10 years, 20, 25, whatever, somehow that can be worked out. And the reason laws should sunset is situations change, especially if it's anything regulatory about technology, where after one generation, which in technology that's like 5 to 10 years, that's half of a human generation, things change and become obsolete. So, we have this, I think, due challenge of at a federal level of Congress people who are ignorant of the technology. They have staffs and lobbyists, who are briefed on the technology but have competing and divergent interests. And when something gets passed, it's out there forever. It's sort of like, I think it was only like 20 years ago that the tax passed to fund the U.S. expense for the Spanish-American War, actually expired. 50 years after it paid off the debt accrued for paying for that war. So that's one one example of why laws should have a sunset automatically. It doesn't matter what it is. All laws should have a sunset provision. And that way it puts it on 10, 20, 25, whatever in the future. The legislature's then to reconsider, is this generally useful and should we extend it?
To be afraid, Mark, of what a mess that creates in 10, 20, 25 years, whatever, as some laws have to be just constantly re-examined. Think about the debates we have over laws that have stood the test of time now. And, we're right back to it. They're being revised. They're being re-examined, because of, well, forget why. They just are being re-examined for reasons that are not always necessarily good. And it distracts us from getting even more stuff done, as if we weren't distracted already enough.
I'm gonna head out, guys.
But we'll have to try it.
Take care, David.
Good night, David.
Hey, David.
Thanks.
Good night.
Oh my God, it's 10:15. I didn't realize it was that late. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.